name is Victor Otieno. I'm the Managing Director at VIFA Consult, a startup and MSME research policy think tank based here in Nairobi, Kenya. Today's session, we ask the big question: is the budget policy statement a real development evaluation tool or simply fluff? So the budget policy statement, or BPS, is a government policy document that sets out strategic priorities and goals that the national as well as county government aims to achieve, and it is part of the budget making process. This is anchored under Section 25 of PFM Act, which is the Public Finance Management Act 2012, which mandates that the National Treasury shall prepare a budget policy statement for approval at Cabinet as well as at National Assembly, with the big date being 15th of February. So the current administration, which is the Kenya Kwanza administration, is preparing or has prepared the 2025 BPS, which is its third. And of course, the aim is to highlight some of the progress that they've been able to make in the implementation of some of the programs that they have under the famous bottom-up economic transformation agenda. The BETA, which is the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, has been rationalized into national planning under the medium-term plan 4, which is part of the Vision 2030. So the approach of the administration is focused on turning around the economy through value chains across different sectors. So ideally, the BPS can be likened to a business one-year plan supported with a budget, with the aim of growing the bottom line or profitability leading to growth. So that's how ideally you look at a budget policy statement. So it's very important to note, as we analyze the government of Kenya's spending plans, not in the traditional sense of looking at which ministry has been allocated what and how much, but in terms of the plan, the overall plan in terms of BPS as well as the amount invested, in terms of its ability and the rationale in achieving the intended goals of economic growth through establishment and investment of transformational programs to all economic sectors leading to economic growth. So that's how ideally you analyze the budget policy statement and the budget and the whole budget cycle. The question is it achieving economic growth? Are we seeing sectors growing? Just like you someone who is in business would put up a budget with the specific plans around it, with the aim that at the end of the day, the business will grow. So that's how ideally we should be able to analyze the budget. So this means that the only way to judge the effectiveness of the program is to observe the outcomes, such as GDP as well as sector growth, among others. So a good analogy of this is, no matter how fast you walk or even run, for those who love running, as long as you're headed in the wrong direction, you will never reach your intended destination. So yes, you can see, it can be likened actually to swimming in mud, where you can see a lot of activities, but there is no progress. So we need to be very careful when analyzing or making our comments or giving feedback to a National Treasury under the budget policy statement, so that you're not just correcting spelling mistakes, etc., but you are really asking the real theory of change, the real hypothesis around some of the plans that are being stated in the budget policy statement, as well as the amount being allocated. So this approach, I think, is the lens upon which we must analyze the BPS, which is often, if you look at previous budget policy statement, we see ineffective programs that don't address the root sector challenges. Of course, this is coupled with inflated costs or budgets. So meaning that the overall national budget is bloated. Hence, we see higher taxes year on year, but with no real private sector economic progress. So we can see the budget is growing, GDP is growing, but the question we should be asking ourselves is, if we can see growth and we don't see that growth within our sectors, within the economy, and that then becomes a number, then what should we ask? What question should we be asking National Treasury to ensure that we are able to get a real return on investment in terms of dividend and economic growth? Because again, this is taxpayers' money. So it's very important for us to be able to look at that. So this line of argument is true looking at Kenya's past economic performance, where we see, although Kenya's GDP growth has been stable over the last last decade or so, averaging an average GDP growth of 5%, we can see that this largely was driven by public sector investment in infrastructure, with trade and foreign investment underperforming. And of course, Kenya lags behind other lower middle income countries such as India and Bangladesh. So what this is, we are essentially saying is, yes, we can see economic growth in terms of GDP, but we don't see, we are seeing this growth being driven by public sector expenditure rather than private sector activities. So the current administration has identified 5 core priority areas that they theorize will bring significant socio-economic development. So it is against these priority areas that we analyze the budget policy statement. So from 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, what we should be looking out is the veracity or effectiveness of programs under agriculture, MSMEs, housing, healthcare, as well as digital economy, digital superhighway, as well as creative industry. So under the 2025 BPS, we again, I think even for us, we are focusing on the 3 areas of agriculture, MSMEs, as well as digital superhighway. And the question we are asking, of course, is the effectiveness, veracity, and just trying to identify gaps under the budget policy statement for 2025, as well as looking at other priorities or programs that had been indicated in the previous budget policy statement, and if they have been implemented or not, and if there's a report, a progress report, which shows either success or failures and lessons learned. So if you look at these 3 sectors, we basically have seen around 3 types of challenges. So there are many challenges, but I would focus on the types of challenges under the BPS, under the 2025 budget policy statement. Number 1 is non-reporting of programs under previous budget cycles. And here we have 3 examples. Under agriculture, we have in 2023, for instance, the government had indicated that they will be able to support smallholder fish farmers in aquaculture farming, as well as providing oil crop seeds, cotton seeds to farmers, among others. So looking at the 2025 budget policy statement, this has not been indicated, which again beats the point. If you instituted a program and invested money in it, we probably as taxpayers would want to know the success or the failure of that, so that we can be able to pick up those lessons as we move forward. So that we're not just doing zero budget. We implement, it works or it doesn't work, we move forward without some sense of continuum. So under MSME, again, non-reporting, we see promotion of consumption of locally manufactured goods and services as a program. Again, progress report has not been mentioned. We also have, in the last financial year, industrial parks, business incubation centers in every TVET, as well as establishment of MSME business development centers in every ward. Again, this is something that was mentioned or was part of the plans in the last financial year. In the current BPS, that has not been mentioned. So if we were to move on, are we saying that we have dropped this, or are we saying that we are going to continue with these programs under MSMEs? Lastly, under digital economy, I think the last financial year there was a mention of establishment of 12 KBC studio mashinani. Again, that has not been highlighted or reported in the current BPS. So again, even as we make comments on the new plans, it's very important for us to be able to look at it from a time series perspective to see if we are making progress or not. Otherwise, it seems like we don't have as a country a good hypothesis or a theory of change in terms of where we want to invest in the long term, because I think that was the whole idea or essence of Vision 2030. So that successive governments are able to build on previous successes. So if, for instance, the current government is not even building on their last year's programs, then what are we saying? The last type of challenge that we see is missing the mark. So the first one is non-reporting. The second one, I think I have not mentioned the second one. So maybe probably can just go. The second one is weak programs that yield no result. So for example, in BPS 2024, under MSME, the government planned to sensitize Kenya's export on export market requirements and opportunities for dairy value chain, edible oil, garments, etc. So this is akin to, this is sensitization. How do you measure sensitization? Does it even produce real results? So that's why we're saying this is a weak program that yield no results. I think this is akin to giving people fish instead of teaching them how to fish. I think, in my opinion, the program must not sensitize, but walk MSMEs through the export journey. Through, for example, reducing regulatory bottlenecks, funding and actual market linkages. Another program is, of course, the famous public Wi-Fi and ICT hubs, which, of course, lack a very clear theory of change in terms of how it actually is going to transform the innovation ecosystem or even entrepreneurs. So the last type of challenge that we see is missing the mark. Looking at beta under the BPS 2022, when the current government came into power, they had strongly proposed a review of regressive taxation, bureaucracy, and regulatory compliance costs. So this was a major priority, or even the current government was run and, of course, won the election based on this, because this actually resonates with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of SMEs as well as startups. So, of course, this was not reported in the BPS 2023 or even 2024. So that has gone silent. So even the 2025 BPS does not mention this in terms of regulatory as well as the business climate. So, of course, there is a lot of has continued to be a lot of calls for conducive business and business climate and a regulatory environment that reduces the regulatory burden, which, of course, continues to reinforce Kenya's informality. And there is no mention of such, which is a big shame. Knowing that such a program can really unlock the power of MSMEs. So, as the saying goes, the proof is in the pudding. So, when we see all these plans, BPS, we see subsequent budgets. The question is there? What is the proof? So, the proof is in the pudding. So, just a quick review. Looking at the 2023 economic review, we see that the GDP deteriorated from a revised 7.6 in 2021 to 4.8 in 2022. Similarly, in 2024, looking at the economic review, we see GDP growing by 5.6 in 2023. Of course, if you're to compare 4.8 2022, 2.3, 5.6 in 2023, the question is, can the government claim that this economic growth is based on part of the programs? We see that the growth in 2023 was mainly driven by agriculture. Of course, this it can be highly attributed to good rains as opposed to government strategic programs and investment. So ideally, government can claim that the investment that they've done or they did in the 2 financial years led to economic growth of 5.6. So I think the question's there. So looking again at manufacturing, for example, as a sector, between 2019 and 2023, the share of GDP of manufacturing to national GDP has dropped from 8.4% to 7.6%. So this is comparing 2019 to 2023. So any serious economy has to be a manufacturing economy. So if the share of manufacturing is reducing, what does that say in terms of our strategic investment and programs around manufacturing, which of course brings together both MSME type manufacturers as well as large manufacturing. So it means that we have a problem. Lastly, looking at companies that have either have reported their performance either in terms of loss making or who have exited the Kenyan market. Of course, this has a direct correlation with government program design as well as investment, with the aim of bringing or reaping socioeconomic growth and dividend. So, as much as people can argue that these are just maybe companies that are focused on high end type of people, it still gives an indication or a dipstick of what is actually happening within the private sector. Of course, looking at the Nairobi Stock Exchange or Nairobi Securities Exchange, we can see the performance there is not as good. I think for a long time we've had a drought in terms of listing, which again tells you something. So again, just quick review. You can see Procter & Gamble, Base Titanium, G4S, Thailand Carpet, CMC, some of the corporations that either have issued orders to their staff regarding layoffs or are planning some sort of closure. So you can see this can be a good way in which you can judge the outcome of the programs that government is instituting through the budget making process. So that's the question we should be asking: is if you say that the BPS, through the BPS programs and the areas that we've identified, and we are saying that we are making strategic investment and saying that we've made progress. From this end of the spectrum, we can see that we are not seeing real outcomes. We can see output, we can see input, we can see output, but we can't see outcome that can indicate that there is actual growth or there's a positive effect of the programs and the investment that government is making. So as I conclude, I think the Kenyan government in 2025 through the BPS must focus on 5 things. Number one, it's plans and investment, not on infrastructure, but on sectors that can quickly rebound the economy, such as startups, agribusiness, as well as manufacturing, but not in a centralized way, but a decentralized manufacturing linked to the county aggregation industrial parks, and of course with the identified export market. Not just sensitizing SMEs on export market, but walking the journey with MSMEs to ensure that they're able to access and able to supply for those markets. I think that can really help the economy rebound, and of course the investment there is not as high if you're to compare to focusing on infrastructure, which of course leads to economic growth, but it's public sector as opposed to private sector growth. Number 2 is reducing regulatory burden at both national as well as county governments. For example, harmonization of cess and branding license across counties, which is making SMEs to be uncompetitive. Review of input cost, especially from in terms of taxation on areas such as electricity, as well as generally the number of taxes that are levied across national as well as county government. So I think there has to be conversations around the same, rather than just increased taxes, sporadic increase of taxes across board. It doesn't inspire confidence to external investors as well as even SMEs. This again would allow for SMEs to move into sectors that can be able to grow the economy, as opposed to when we see or SMEs see a number of taxation and the environment being hard, they would most likely stick to being informal and would continue to invest in sectors that are not beneficial ideally to the economy, which is wholesale retail. So number 3 is actively seeking and linking MSMEs to actual market rather than sensitization. Number 4 is provide markets to Kenyan startups through access to procurement opportunities. The current government has pronounced itself around the digital economy and saying that it wants to be a digital government. So instead of giving the opportunities to foreign multinationals, I think there's an opportunity for government to work with startups to be able to support government digitalization and innovation. Lastly is rationalization of budget expenditure on realistic revenue collections rather than unrealistic revenue projection based on assumption, which of course leads to deficits and pending bills, which I think is not of benefit to the economy. So this marks the end of today's session. I hope again it's been helpful to you. Let me know what you think in terms of the topics that today's topic, as well as suggestions on other MSME and startup topics that you think that we can tackle. You can as well share your feedback through our social media handles at Vifa Consult. See you in the next one.